My name is Kukulethu Cele, and I'm traveling in the African continent in search of entrepreneurs who are making a difference in their own communities. This is Profit with Purpose. This is what giving back is all about. This is Chivas. Win the right way. Media is a tricky business to be in at the moment, but Eugene Mbugua, the founder and managing director of Young Rich Television, is making it work and working it well. Eugene's foray into the world of entrepreneurship at the tender age of 18 saw him setting up a film school, but found true success in the form of an entrepreneurial show called Young Rich. Let's actually start with your entrepreneurial journey. I think looking back at your bio, you actually wanted to be an accountant, found your entrepreneurial joy, was a boom swinger once in a production team, and here you are today with your own production company. Sounds to me like you've had an interesting plan as to how you've established your entity.
Not plan per se, just journey, because some of those happened by accident. But I started out not really wanting to be an accountant, but being pushed to be an accountant because, growing up African, your parents keep telling you these are the sort of career paths you can take.
Talk to us about your journey then as to what actually led you to deciding to enter into the media space and establishing your own production company.
So it happened also, as a lot of things in my life do, by accident. A cousin of mine took me to a production set. He was working as a soundman for one of the local production houses here in Kenya, and during that period after I had just completed my high school examination, there's a few months where you're just lying around, going to driving school, going to do computer courses and things like that as you wait for the results. And so he said, just come along, see what we do. And I went to a film set and I fell in love on day one. If you know anything about production, you begin as a runner. Then if you're lucky, you might graduate to a boom singer, and so I took the whole steps. I actually went a step lower. I began as an extra. After that, I got accepted into a university and I had to go off to school. So when I registered for school, at this time I was deep in love with production, and I knew this is what I wanted to pursue. Mm-hmm. So actually I picked TV production as my course in university, and I picked part-time so that I could go to film sets during the day and go to class in the evening. Here I am in university. I have all day free because my classes begin at 5:30 p.m.
Wow. And
so that's where entrepreneurship came along, because a friend of mine, his name is Peter, the one I mentioned, who I had met on one of these film sets. We set up our first company. With the little knowledge we had acquired from meddling around film sets, we thought, how about we go teach kids in primary school? They wouldn't know that we don't know much.
I want us to fast track to actually establishing a production company that was able to source, promote and produce content, which is actually being aired by one of the national stations here. How did you get to that point where you had that much conviction to believe that not only would this be profitable, but that you'd also get a positive reception from the market?
One of the things I stumbled upon is I always used to ask, who owns the show? Who is the person? So obviously you're the director, yes, but you're employed, yes. And then I found there's this person called executive producer who actually, in most cases in Kenya particularly, owns the show. And when they're the business person who owns it. And so I think that's where the idea was implanted in my head. Maybe one day I can own my own show, because I don't want to climb the ladder, I want to own the ladder. And so during when I was teaching in school, I'd walk through most often, particularly in the first days, I didn't have enough money to even get enough transport from where I was going to school up until where I was teaching. So sometimes I'd walk a very long distance, about 4-5 kilometers on a Friday. Sure. to get to the school. And to take shortcuts, I'd pass through fancy neighborhoods and I'd see all these young guys in their nice cars driving into nice apartment blocks. And I'd always wonder, who are these people and what do they do? And then many weeks of wondering about that, I was like, I wonder how many other Kenyans are wondering about the same thing that I'm wondering about. And TV show idea. Just a few weeks before my graduation, I got a call back from one of the stations. I was like, you had given us a proposal for this show, yeah. Do you have a pilot? It's like, yes, of course I have a pilot. I didn't have a pilot. And so, run around. I'm traveling now, but I can deliver it to you in 2 weeks. And I film this pilot and I take it in, and it's like, great, we'll take this as the first episode. Give us 11 more. No, 12 more.
What's the plan?
I was like, okay. The Friday, my first TV show aired on national TV, the first episode. And that was Young Rich. And it was quite a good contract because it made me a millionaire by Kenyan shillings in, I think, a month.
Eugene. That's a lot of success to attain in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and that's why I say a lot of it is not, it's not like I had this grand plan. I was trying all these things and things luckily fell in place. Yeah, and then we just kept rolling, and now we think we have 5 TV shows now.
And you do. Story Young was one of them, Our Perfect Wedding, as well as many others that you try to source.
Get in the Kitchen, Foods of Africa.
Precisely.
Yeah, quite a few.
That's quite a number of shows that you do have on the table, but how do you ensure that in such a volatile industry where we know the media space has come under significant pressure, it's the digital age where a lot of consumers actually viewing their content online or on separate platforms as and when they want to. How do you deal with some of those dynamics as you try to bring more product offerings to the audience?
For us, I think the key point is we try to adapt with how things are rolling by, because sometimes you have a long-term plan and then life happens, or the industry happens, like in our case here with the digital migration. So Kenya just moved from analog to digital, and it's just disrupted everything. And so one of the things we had to do, particularly with the growth of digital, is re-strategize how we finance our TV shows, bring the cost down, work more on volume, because now with the digital, particularly with online content, there's a lot of volume and it's more niche now.
Given your story and even your personal experience in the industry, it's clearly quite evident that you need to remain nimble, agile, and as you say, adapt to the ever-moving environment. But how does that still speak to the end goal, which is attaining some kind of success, which is financially, or ensuring that you still remain relevant in the industry, and also speaks to the Chivas way of doing things as to how you win the right way? How do you believe you've done that and accomplished that through your business so far?
One of the core things that I'm very passionate about in Kenya particularly is the unemployment rate. So one of the things that gives me the most sense of satisfaction is having a positive impact on the country, and that's twofold. So the first one is through the content that we produce. We try to keep it as positive as possible. We try to sort of push an agenda of self-sustainability, because our generation has a very huge entitlement mentality, where you feel like there's a huge superhero is going to come and save you at some point. That superhero might be government, might be your parents, and so what we try to push is that no, it's up to you, and if you actually get the ball rolling and take it up upon yourself, you can actually get it done. And we were very lucky to be able to do that with Young Rich. Every now and then we get random emails, even now when the show hasn't been on air in Kenya for a while, that I saw this idea on your show, and this person who was featured on your show said this and that, and it really stuck with me, and as a result I went out and got a business, and now I employ 10 or 15 people. It's very satisfying when something you created out of your head can actually achieve that result. So that's on the consumer perspective. But now on my perspective, one of the ways that I'm particularly interested in also contributing to our economy and sort of helping end this unemployment issue that's a big deal in Kenya, is setting up just a multitude of businesses. So there's been a lot of random diversification in places where we have no business being. Like as I was telling you earlier, we're now putting together a chain of cocktail bars. And the fascinating thing about a bar, for example, is overnight, as soon as you open your doors, bam, 30 people have jobs. The cocktail bar is called Number 7, so we want to set up 14 of them, because 7 times 2, 14. Even if you look at my number plate, everything is 777.
Why is 7 a lucky number for you?
Not particularly.
Just the multiplier
No,
effect.
but it's because psychologists say that if you've been friends with someone for 7 years, chances are you'll be friends with them for life. So
what if you're married to someone for 7 years? Doesn't always work out that way.
Doesn't always work out that way. But marriage complicates friendships. I always know that. But yeah, so I found that fascinating, because we asked ourselves, what do you ideally go to bars to do? To hang out with your friends. And that's how the name came about. And then I just got obsessed with the whole owning the brand thing. So the pet project is we're trying to set up so many of them and sell them for $10 million within the next 3 years.
Eugene, we are hitting the roads and the streets of Nairobi, a place that you're very familiar with, given that you grew up in this city. But what's doing business like in Nairobi, especially at such a volatile time politically?
Well, the thing is, Nairobi is mostly stable most of the times, until when we have the elections coming by, and then that's when things tend to get volatile. But other than that, it's usually very stable. And even now, it's not volatile in the sense that it's insecure or anything of that sort. It's just that people tend to stay at home. Obviously, in an election year, there's less spending by clients. So small difficulties like that. Of course, there's also the issues that plague almost all economies. Infrastructure. Sometimes you'll have water problems. power can be a bit an issue at some time. But I like to look at it not so much as a problem, but as challenges that you have to overcome. I mean, everybody has challenges, and we have the same, just like everyone else. But I'd say overall, the Nairobi economy right now is very ripe. It's very exciting to be here, because the thing about being a developing economy is it's almost every industry is yours for the taking.
So ripe for development.
Yeah, you go to some places and you're just like, they have everything. You really can't see an idea of anything that you can bring.
Eugene, we're in your beautiful home, in your personal space, so thank you so much for inviting us.
No
but of course, we've also managed to look around and naturally see that you're quite neat for a bachelor too, so I'm surprised by that.
No, I thrive in order.
Within celebrating your success, you mentioned that you don't like the victimhood title necessarily. How does that speak to how you try to approach and encourage other youth to celebrate their success, work hard, and not necessarily look to their backgrounds as a pity point or pity party for them to get an upper hand in life?
Entitlement, I think, is one of the biggest problems that's facing African youth. It's because we always feel like the position we're in is someone else's fault. Like in Kenya, I don't know if in other African countries you have this, but every time there'll be a disaster or the news will be reporting on something, you'll always hear people ending with the line, "Na naomba serikali," which is, I'm asking the government to come in, and I'm asking the government. And now in the case of the youth is, oh, you can always argue my parents didn't set me up for success. You can always argue the system is failing me. You can always argue the government doesn't support me. But really, all you're doing is playing victim and going along with the entitlement mentality. And I try to go against it. So you are dealt a bad card, great. You and a billion others. So you can either sit there and wallow in the bad card and sort of sink in your sadness, or you can do something about it. And in most cases, the change is within your reach. It's all, I believe, and I know this is something, it's a bit unfair to say, because in some cases it's not always within people's reach. But I'm a strong believer in that whatever situation you're in, you can change it yourself if you actually exert yourself.
How then do you interpret this in your own life and some of the changes that you look to implement in other people's lives through CSI projects, through, again, the theme of shared success and really winning the right way and not only attaining success for yourself as an individual? Yeah.
So one of the things that we do at my company, for example, is we support a lot of educational things. So there's on a personal level as well. You used the term earlier, the African tax?
Black tax, yes.
Black tax. So, obviously growing up in a setup where extended family tends to creep in, and being in a poor country, of course, so I have family members who are not so well off. So on a personal level, I always try to, at least, particularly on education, because I don't believe in handouts. I'll not give you money to live off, because that's not sustainable. Also at my company, and you'll go and you'll see almost all my employees are around my age or younger, with the exception of very few.
Is that deliberate?
It's deliberate.
Why?
Because I'm a big believer in experience. So most companies will hire based on what have you done. 7 years experience, 10 years experience. But where are you going to get it if everybody's looking for 7-10 years experience? So at our company, what we try to do is, so we have the key guys, because even I didn't learn what I know from 10 years experience anywhere. I learned from just having a proper mentality and the right discipline to actually see the learning through. Talent is overrated, if you ask me. It's mostly just discipline, and because you see, if you have the right attitude and you come into the company, even if you don't work out at editing, you can work out at camera. Even if you don't work out at camera, you can work out at, we can find a place for you, so long as you have the right energy and you're willing to put in the hours and the effort that it requires. So as a result, we hire quite a younger group across all my companies.
Where does leadership and trust and accountability, how do some of these themes actually not only part of your personal life, but also themes that you look to implement within your business life too?
So I always try to sort of lead from the front in my organizations by being reliable, and this usually affects a lot of things in business, because particularly in the industry that I'm in, TV is about deadlines. So to be able to, you can't deliver deadlines on your TV shows and not deliver deadlines on other elements of your life. And then that creates consistency, and over time that's what leads to success, I hope. I could be wrong, it also probably just leads to an early death. That's it. Yeah.
Where did these influences come from, though? You naturally have a very close relationship with your mother.
Yeah.
But talk to us about how some of these principles were instilled in you as a young boy to the level that you are now.
I don't really know where they came from, to be honest with you, because in school I was a principal. I was actually kicked out of a few schools.
Bad behavior?
Rebelness. I've had an issue with following rules from when I was younger. Rules have to make sense for me to follow them. But I really don't know where they came from. But it's something maybe it's also like a coping mechanism, because at the beginning, when you're young and you're trying to get into business, people are always very doubtful of you. Like, yeah, you will not be on time, you will not deliver. So I think maybe it's just sort of like learning to cope with that and prove them wrong, so that you don't fit into the stereotype of the unreliable young guy. And it doesn't help that I already have dreadlocks. I don't wear suits. So the moment you meet me, automatically it's
skeptical. Yeah.
You're skeptical.
This way of life has also been acknowledged by several media publications. You've got quite a few magazine covers that you have up on the wall, some that you featured on, and some that actually provide you with a bit of inspiration.
Yes.
Talk us through some of them.
In 2014, I was listed among top 40 under 40 Kenyan men, because they have one for men and one for women. So I was in the top 40 under 40 Kenyan men. I think I was 20. I hadn't even turned 24 at the time. I was 23.
Sure.
Then I've been on Forbes.com, 30 most promising entrepreneurs in Africa. That was 2016. And then in 2017, I was on Forbes Africa, top 30 under 30.
Some might say that you're a bit of an overachiever. Huh?
Yes, I'm very competitive.
So hypothetically speaking, it's 10 years down the line, you're on the cover of a magazine and someone is looking to you for inspiration. What is the lesson that you hope that they learn from you, from your personal story?
Never finish the last drink.
There must be more than that.
There must be more than that. Fight and be very aware that the fight will not be short, because I feel like most people usually start out but then never see it through, and that's what makes the whole difference.
Now, the media game is a tricky one. It's far from smooth sailing. It takes a very strong and specific type of gentleman to run a production company that specializes in reality TV. Eugene, we're in your office space, and of course, this is where all the magic happens.
Yes.
You've introduced us to your amazing team. But for someone who comes from the outside looking in and doesn't necessarily understand the intricacies of a production house, walk us through how you're very clear on the selection criteria for your team and how this operation actually, manages its day-to-day activities.
Yeah. So when most people hear about a production house, they imagine a studio. And ideally that's what it is. But in our case, it's a bit different, because what we do is reality and documentary TV. So which means a lot of our work is actually done outside of the office. So this is just like sort of a meeting point to have the accounts and editing.
Yeah.
So that's what you've seen we have here. But a lot of our work actually happens on the ground, because if we're interviewing someone, we go to their home, we go to their, like, case in point, like what you guys are doing.
With that said, though, you've also managed to keep your costs quite low, and which has worked to your benefit in quite a competitive environment like we see now in Kenya. How do you ensure that this will be sustainable in the future, especially with the rise of digital technology, consuming television and content on our phones?
Yeah. So your question is actually the answer. One way of ensuring sustainability in a business is keeping costs low, because then that means you can take more jobs. It means you can, if your costs are low and you go through a glut like we are right now in Kenya with the political storm, it means you can survive slightly longer than normal companies would with high costs, because it means if there's not that much revenue coming in, you're still okay.
There's always room for even more products to be available. So how do you see yourself sourcing more content and local content, which might be relevant to the rest of the continent and the world in future?
Other than the two shows that we do for Maisha Magic and Mnemnet, all our other shows are created in-house. And so far a lot of them have been from my creation, which is why you'll have the credit created by Eugene Mbugua. However, now as we go ahead, I'm trying to expand that. So like I think we're going into a scenario where the different teams in the company are allowed to come in and suggest ideas for TV shows. So we just decide genres. So we say, like, cooking shows are huge everywhere, wedding shows are huge everywhere, sports shows are huge everywhere. So then how do we make ours different? We've also gotten into co-production with other production companies. So somewhere else, someone has an idea and we have the money and the manpower to execute the idea. That doesn't always work out very well. It's complicated, because the biggest challenge we've found is that the people who want to partner with us are not on the same moving level as we are, because we are always running. Yeah. So they get overwhelmed, or they're interested, they're trying it as a side thing. So some of those partnerships have tended to fall on the wayside, but it's something we're still very open to. Because at the level of content we're looking to produce, we can't do it all by ourselves, so we're constantly looking for new ideas.
Every maverick has a mentor, and one of Eugene's closest is his consulting producer at Young Rich Television, Mwaniki Mageria.
I met Eugene. We were doing a project with another mutual friend, and Eugene was brought into the picture, and they said, oh, there's this young man who reads a lot and very clever. So we said, okay, well, let's see whether we can do this project together. It actually didn't work out. But when Eugene met me, he said, oh, you've got a TV face, you've got a really good voice. Can we work on it? I said, I've been trying to get on TV for so long. Why don't we do something together? Yes, I said, no problem. So we got on to, we started off with Get in the Kitchen. We did a pilot, and he went on looking for someone to buy it. And when he finally did, we got onto television, and it was a booming success. So he said, hey, we need to do something else together. So because I have got a marketing background, we sat down, and he said, I've got this idea of using marketing goods through music, because I'm also a music producer, by the way. That's one of the things I did when I was much younger. So he said, yeah, why don't you try and do something like that? So we formed a company, and I became the chair of the company. And basically what we do is go to corporates and ask them to place their products on music videos that run across all the local broadcasters and local channels, and even beyond Nairobi and beyond Kenya. Yeah.
The two of you have a very interesting partnership, and almost seem like a pair that many people wouldn't put together. Eugene appears to be young, more creative, and slightly more vibrant. You yourself coming from a very structured background, politics, business. How critical is it that you actually find somebody that you can, merge together with, and ensure that your talent pools can mesh together to actually, reach levels of resounding success that you've achieved?
I think it's absolutely critical to have people that complement your personality and your skill set. He's totally different from me. He likes sitting down. He's meticulous. He pens everything, jots all the I's and crosses the T's. And he's very tenacious. He goes for something and doesn't stop. I'm more of a happy guy, so I create, I've got good relationships, I've got good contacts. So we work with his tenacity and skill, and then my networks and good, what shall I call it, happy-go-lucky, sort of being able to make people feel comfortable. And we work very, very, very well.
Given the successes you've attained with Eugene in your personal life as well, and the establishment of the Riverwood Awards, what does shared success mean to you in order to win the right way?
Oh, that's such a powerful... when you share it with somebody, particularly with someone as I think Eugene is very friendly. He's very, in fact, my family call him the brother. He's a brother to our family. He comes in and he's part of the family completely. I mean, he has his birthdays at our house. The same when I'm having my birthday, he has to be over. The kids find him, they can talk to him about business and that kind of thing. So that sharing is more than just business sharing. It's gone into a personal friendship. We're good friends. If I've not talked to him in a day, I'm like, hey, where are you? What's happening? And I think when you share those moments with people that you're doing business with, that you're being successful with, I think it becomes that more meaningful. It's not just money, it's about a relationship, it's about a bond, it's about brotherhood. And I think I really enjoy working with Eugene. He's actually changed. I'm a bit older, I'm much older than him. But he's taught me a lot of things and changed my perception on success and on working with people, because I've worked with others in the past and it's been a disaster, but this particular connection has been really, really, really great.
You mentioned partnerships, and I want to squeeze in your partnership that you have with Mwaniki. How critical has that partnership been? And of course, as you say, identifying key individuals that you can actually partner with to execute certain projects.
So I'm going to speak particularly about the Mwaniki partnership, because it's a very special one for me. As you've seen, he's older than I am. And what he brings to the table is one of the biggest challenges of being a young entrepreneur is networks. There's no shortcut around it. It doesn't matter how many magazines you've been on the cover of. If people don't know you on a personal level, they just don't know you, they won't do business with you. Because network is built from spending time with someone, having done some business with them somewhere, and then they trust you now. Mwaniki has a lot of that, and so it sort of sanitizes my lack of network, because he's able to open doors that I'm usually unable to open.
Every entrepreneur also has sidelines, and one of Eugene's sidelines is his new line of cocktail bars, Number 7, one of which we visited with him. We're in your wonderful establishment called Number 7, and this is one of the cocktail bars that yourself and a few other co-owners are actually looking to develop and expand upon.
We intend to open 14 of them in the next 3 to 4 years. So again,
7
times 2 in the next 3 to 4 years. And then hopefully the idea is to create a brand around it and then eventually flip it. So like at this particular branch, we have 19 permanent staff, and you can see it's a small space, but it has 19 permanent staff and about 7 to 10 casuals, depending on a busy night or what we have going on the day of the week. So you can see just automatically creating nearly 30 employment opportunities, and this is not counting the construction, because that's a whole different team that comes in for a few months and then leaves, as you've seen at the construction site.
But the opportunities at the construction site are also quite profound.
Yes, there you have the contractor obviously, and they have a team of and different specialists, all the way from the floor to the gypsum ceiling to the bar to carpenters to the sound engineers to ICT guys. You just have huge groups of people coming in and being able to make a living from creation of spaces like this.
Do you believe that you're successful?
Not quite yet.
What more would you like to do?
I want the world and everything that's in it. No, I'm joking. No, but the reason I say is because my goal keeps shifting.
What intrigues me about you, though, Eugene, is that number one, you're an entrepreneur who's constantly thinking, constantly innovating, constantly looking at new avenues in which to create an environment for shared success, but also you're not afraid of failure.
No.
What does that mean for young Rich in the next 6 to 12 or even 18 months and future ambitions that you have for yourself personally?
I am actually afraid of failure. I go on regardless. But for the next 18 months, I'd say, on the production side, there's a new avenue that we've recently gotten into in the last 2 years or so, which is expanding our viewership into the world, not just Kenya. And so to this regard, we've had a lot of our, not a lot, 2 of our TV shows licensed by foreign stations, including Trigger in South Africa, Food in India, and just basically widening our audience.
As we wrap up, though, Eugene, I want to get your sense of understanding as to how you respond to individuals who view you as a young African who really is living the African dream, so to speak, and creating this for yourself within the context of the African continent. How do you continue to share this particular view with your global counterparts who might have a slightly different perspective as to how African entrepreneurs do things? And you're showing them that you can win the right way, you can be successful, and you can be globally relevant too.
Every time you meet people from elsewhere, not Africa, and even sometimes other African regions, is you can, just from speaking to you or from reading about you, when they change their mindset about what notions they had about Africa, that helps, because it means it's one less positive, because the narrative that's out there about Africa is pretty dim. In Kenya right now, as we're doing this interview, I think all headlines are pointing to political turmoil, but it's in very small areas. So, and when this narrative is repeated over time, it becomes the label that the region has or the country has. So to be able to provide an alternative narrative is also very satisfying. This positive narrative about Africa is actually in demand. People are starting to see that there's actually another side of the kid with the fly on their nose.
What do you want to be remembered for?
I think I'd like to be remembered first as someone who wasn't afraid to try. That's why I'd really want to be remembered as someone who genuinely contributed to their society, both economically and also on a personal level.
Eugene, with that said, onwards and upwards, and wishing you the very best in shared success.
Thank you.